I have spent a great deal of my life watching human beings chase connection while quietly running away from it. And I want to speak to you not as a lecturer above you, but as a fellow participant in this strange dance. Because there is a particular irony I've noticed. Those we call intelligent, perceptive, thoughtful, often find themselves alone, not suddenly, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one day they look around and realize the room is empty. Now let me ask you something, and I invite you to answer honestly in the comments below. Have you ever felt that the more you understand people, the harder it becomes to truly belong among them? You see, intelligence is not merely the accumulation of facts. It is sensitivity. It is the ability to notice patterns, contradictions, subtleties. And when you become sensitive, you begin to see through the games people play, especially the games they play with themselves. You notice the unspoken rules, the social performances, the rituals of approval and rejection. And once you see these things clearly, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to pretend you don't. Most human relationships are built not on truth, but on mutual reassurance. We agree silently to confirm each other's identities. You are who you think you are, we say without words, and I will not disturb that story if you do not disturb mine. This is how society maintains its fragile sense of order. But the intelligent mind has a troublesome habit. It asks, is this really true? And that question alone can make you quietly dangerous. When you begin to see that much of conversation is ritual rather than communication, something changes inside you. You notice how often people speak not to express, but to defend, not to explore, but to reinforce. And when you respond honestly, when you speak from observation rather than performance, you may feel a subtle withdrawal, a pause, a shift in energy. People don't argue with you. They simply stop inviting you in. This is not because you are wrong. It is because clarity unsettles those who survive on certainty. And so the intelligent person learns, slowly and painfully, that truth is not always welcome company. There is another layer to this loneliness, and it is even more subtle. The intelligent mind tends to value depth over frequency. One meaningful conversation can satisfy it more than 100 polite exchanges. But society rewards repetition, not depth. It rewards availability, not presence. And so you may find yourself uninterested in maintaining connections that feel thin, obligatory, or performative. Not out of arrogance, but out of fatigue. Over time, this selectiveness becomes isolation. And here is the great misunderstanding. People assume that intelligent individuals are alone because they feel superior. In reality, it is often the opposite. They are alone because they see too clearly how fragile, anxious, and wounded human beings truly are, and they do not wish to exploit that vulnerability just to belong. You see, to truly belong in many social circles, one must accept certain illusions. One must exaggerate confidence, simplify complexity, suppress doubt. But the intelligent mind knows that doubt is not weakness, it is honesty. And honesty, in a world addicted to certainty, can feel like social disobedience. So you begin to censor yourself, not because you lack thoughts, but because you know how disruptive those thoughts can be. You learn which observations will be met with laughter, which with silence, and which with quiet exclusion. And eventually, silence seems the most peaceful option. But silence has consequences. When you spend too much time inside your own understanding, you may forget that others are not resisting truth out of malice, but out of fear. Fear of losing identity, fear of chaos, fear of standing on uncertain ground. And if you forget this, intelligence can harden into detachment. Now, if you're listening carefully, I am not romanticizing loneliness. I am describing its mechanics. Because understanding why intelligent people slowly end up alone is not an excuse to remain there, it is an invitation to see the pattern clearly. There is a difference between solitude and isolation. Solitude is chosen, isolation is accumulated, and intelligent people often drift from one into the other without realizing when the shift occurred. So, I want you to reflect on this. Are you alone because you see too much, or because you have stopped translating what you see into something others can receive? One of the quiet tragedies of intelligence is the belief that understanding must always lead to distance. I have met many who think, if I see the illusion, I must step outside it. But this is a misunderstanding of what it means to be human. For you are not here to stand above the dance, you are here to dance knowingly. You see, when you recognize the masks people wear, it is tempting to reject the entire masquerade. You may say to yourself, I refuse to participate in something false. But consider this carefully. The mask is not the enemy. The belief that the mask is the self that is the trouble. And when you see this clearly, you gain a peculiar freedom. You can participate without being deceived. The intelligent person often withdraws because they confuse authenticity with bluntness. They think that truth must always be delivered raw, unfiltered, immediate. But wisdom understands timing. Wisdom understands tone. Wisdom understands that truth, when offered without compassion, feels like violence to those who are not ready. This is why intelligence without gentleness becomes isolating. Human beings are not built to absorb reality all at once. We approach truth the way our eyes approach light, gradually, or else we go blind. And so when you speak from insight, you must ask yourself not only, is this true, but also, is this useful now? And can it be heard? When intelligent people feel alone, it is often because they have mistaken clarity for finality. They think, I see how things are, therefore there is nothing left to do. But seeing is only the beginning. What matters is how you relate to what you see. There is a profound paradox here. The more deeply you understand yourself, the more patient you must become with others. Because you begin to recognize that confusion is not ignorance, it is simply being at a different point on the same path. Now let us speak honestly about superiority, because it lurks in subtle forms. The intelligent mind may not feel superior in ego, but it can feel superior in distance. I do not need this, it says. I am beyond these concerns. And yet the desire to be beyond is itself a form of attachment. If you believe you have outgrown human connection, you may want to look again. For enlightenment does not remove you from humanity, it returns you to it with open eyes. Another reason intelligent people drift into loneliness is that they demand resonance instead of rapport. They wait for someone who understands them completely, who speaks their language fluently, who sees the same patterns. But such complete resonance is rare, not because others are shallow, but because every mind is tuned differently. Connection does not require sameness. It requires curiosity. If you wait only for those who mirror you, you will wait a long time. But if you learn to appreciate difference not as a flaw, but as a texture, you may find companionship where you least expected it. You see, most people are not uninterested in depth. They are simply untrained in it. And training does not happen through lectures. It happens through shared presence, humor, vulnerability, and patience. When you meet people where they are, not where you think they should be, you stop being alone without betraying your intelligence. There is also the matter of emotional literacy. Many intelligent individuals are brilliant observers of thought, yet awkward participants in feeling. They can explain emotions beautifully while avoiding experiencing them openly, and this creates a gap. People feel understood intellectually, but not felt emotionally. Human bonds are not formed through explanation. They are formed through resonance of feeling. You may understand why someone is angry, afraid, or insecure, but unless you allow yourself to feel alongside them, you remain a visitor rather than a companion. And visitors, no matter how insightful, eventually go home alone. Now listen closely. Vulnerability is not the abandonment of intelligence, it is its fulfillment. When you allow yourself to be seen without commentary, without analysis, without protection, something remarkable happens. Others relax, they stop performing, and suddenly depth appears not because you demanded it, but because you permitted it. The intelligent person must learn this art, to lower the shield of observation just enough to let life touch them. This does not mean pretending you do not see what you see. It means remembering that connection is not about accuracy, it is about presence. You can be right and still be distant. You can be quiet and still be close. And if you are listening to this and thinking, "But I have tried and I am still alone," I ask you to consider this gently. Are you seeking connection, or are you waiting to be discovered? Because waiting is comfortable. It preserves identity. But reaching out, truly reaching out, requires risk. It requires the possibility of misunderstanding. And yes, it requires patience with conversations that may not immediately stimulate your mind, but may slowly warm your heart. There comes a moment, if you are paying attention, when loneliness reveals its final lesson. It is not there to punish you for seeing too much. It is there to ask you a question. What are you going to do with what you see? Because intelligence by itself is incomplete. It is a lens, not a destination. And when you treat it as a destination, you end up watching life instead of participating in it. The truly intelligent person eventually discovers something liberating. You do not have to choose between depth and connection. You only have to let go of the idea that connection must look a certain way. Most people think belonging means being understood. In fact, belonging is far simpler and far more mysterious. It is the willingness to share space without demanding resolution, to laugh without explanation, to sit with someone in confusion without rushing to clarity. When you stop trying to be understood, you become understandable. This is why playfulness is so essential. Play is intelligence relaxing its grip. It is curiosity without agenda. Children are not lonely because they are profound philosophers. They are not lonely because they are present. They enter games knowing they are games. They do not confuse the rules with reality. And this is precisely what the intelligent adult must relearn. You can engage in small talk knowing it is small talk. You can enjoy ritual without believing it is ultimate. You can participate without surrendering awareness. This is not hypocrisy, it is skillful living. The moment you stop demanding that every interaction justify your depth, life becomes lighter. And in that lightness, people feel safe with you. They do not feel examined. They do not feel corrected. They feel accompanied. Loneliness dissolves not when you find the perfect mind to match yours, but when you realize that perfection was never the requirement. Now, let me say something that may sound surprising. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. And once you understand this distinction deeply, fear disappears. When you are alone and at ease, you radiate something powerful. You are not seeking validation. You are not negotiating identity. You are simply there. And paradoxically, this is when connection arrives most naturally. People are drawn not to intelligence, but to ease. Ease says, "You may be as you are." And that permission is rare. Most people are exhausted from performing. When they sense that you are not asking them to be different, they relax. And in that relaxation, depth emerges organically. This is why the intelligent person must abandon the role of observer and become a participant again, not blindly, but playfully. Life is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a rhythm to be felt. And when you feel it, you stop standing apart from it. If you are listening to this, and you have spent years feeling separate, misunderstood, or quietly alone, I want you to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you, but there may be something unfinished. Your task is not to lower your intelligence. Your task is to soften its edges with humor, patience, and compassion, to allow yourself to be human, not just perceptive. And when you do this, you may still spend time alone, but it will no longer feel like exile. It will feel like space, spacious enough to invite others in without fear of losing yourself. So the question is not why intelligent people end up alone. The real question is whether they learn in time how to return. If this spoke to something you felt but never quite put into words, share your thoughts below. And if you're walking this path right now, know that you are not behind, you are simply becoming aware. And awareness, when worn lightly, is the beginning of connection.